second. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, terrific. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to our meeting of the Fall 2021 meeting of the General Faculty and Faculty Council. We have a very full agenda, and I don't want to take too much time with my remarks. I did want you to know that on Wednesday, I was invited to return to speak to the Board of Trustees. I began my remarks with telling them that when I began this position, someone came to me and gave me this advice. Remember who you work for. You work for the faculty who elected you, not the administration and not any other entity. And I told them this was a guiding principle for me in the choices I make about what to say, when to say it, and to whom. I shared that with them so that they would be clear that if I was telling them some difficult perspective, it was not to throw a bomb, but it was because I work for you, the faculty. I then went further to talk with them about the two issues that will be the focus of our meeting today, the libraries and the mental health and well-being of our campus. I'll say a bit more about each of these areas as the meeting unfolds, but I did want to tell you a bit about that conversation. In response, one trustee did tell me that they were deeply concerned about your well-being and that the trustees as a body are engaged around the issues related to the library. So that was positive. I know that we are all very tired right now. It has been a difficult coming up on 2 years, and the summer and this fall have been challenging in ways that extend beyond the pandemic. Later today, we will have a chance for open discussion about what we are seeing in our classrooms. We are a big group, but I hope you will feel empowered to speak about whatever is important to you in that conversation. We've also sent out a survey as of yesterday asking for your input in a more confidential format. And as always, I'm happy to talk by phone or hear your comments through email. We do have a mental health summit on November 15th on the horizon. It's not my job to structure or plan that event, but it is my job to make sure that your voices are represented, and the survey and today's discussion are ways to do that. Next, I'm grateful to our guests that will be with us today, both for our discussion of the libraries and for the mental health discussion. Please note that this is the third discussion, maybe the fourth, that faculty governance has convened in response to the library's crisis. So we're trying to be as responsive to our concerns as we can be, and also to look at that from various angles. Finally, I just want to conclude by saying, in these last weeks of the semester, please be good to yourselves and to each other and to the students and staff that you work with. These are simply not easy days, and we need to individually and collectively affirm one another. I am grateful for all that you do and all that you are. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill. We are doing things a little bit out of order so that we have sort of uninterrupted conversation later on. So, Jill.
Thank you, Mimi. Good afternoon, everyone. We do have a little bit of faculty council business to take care of, and we wanted to go ahead and do that at the beginning of the meeting. Couple of announcements that I would like to make as we get into the discussions later on. If you could please keep your mics muted when you're not speaking, and also when you participate, please do identify yourself by your name and your department or school. That's very helpful for our discussions. I have first an announcement and then a couple of action items that are for the faculty council only. This is a meeting of council and general faculty, but I'll say more about faculty council participation in the action items. The announcement is that we are planning to begin meeting in a hybrid format in January. That is, if our COVID metrics and Carolina community standards permit that at that time, but that's the plan that we want to pursue. We surveyed faculty council members about when to return to in-person meetings, and we got a very good response rate, about 85%. So thank you all very much for participating in that. We found that you were about evenly divided on the closed questions asking whether we should resume in person in the spring or next academic year. But it was clear from the open-ended questions that a primary need was for there to be flexibility for medical, public health, family care, and other reasons. And so hybrid seemed like a good route to start with. Again, that is, we may reevaluate if we have another COVID surge after the holidays, but that is the plan. More details will come, and again, that will begin in January. Our final meeting of this semester will be December 3rd, and that is going to be on Zoom, as we have been for however long it's been now. That's the announcement. Then I have 2 items of faculty council business, and these are items that require votes. We do have a meeting today of the faculty council and general faculty combined, but on these votes, only faculty council members may vote. So please keep that in mind, and please refrain from voting if you're not a member of the faculty council. The first thing that we need to vote upon is receiving one of our committee reports. The Faculty Hearings Committee has submitted its annual report, and it came out with the agenda, and so you should have had the opportunity to read it. And I believe that the committee chair, Charlotte Bodiger, is with us today in case you have any questions. And the way we typically receive reports is, unless there are any questions of the chair from faculty council members, then my recommendation is that we accept it by unanimous consent. Are there any questions for the chair? Sue, I just saw that your hand is up. I'm sorry. Did you have a question about this or about my announcement? Okay, well, are there any questions for the chair of the Faculty Hearings Committee about the report? Okay, if there are not, is there any objection by any faculty council member to accepting the report by unanimous consent? Okay, then we do not need to vote. We can accept the report by unanimous consent. Okay, the next item we are going to have a vote on, and I'm going to keep repeating myself just in case we have new people joining us. The vote is for faculty council members only. It is going to be a poll, and some of you who are not members may be able to see the poll. Please refrain from voting if you are not a faculty council member. This is like in elementary school when the whole class would have to pay the consequences of one student violating the rule. If we have a vote that we can't accept, then we'll have to do a roll call vote, and that'll take us a little bit longer. So the item that we have to vote on is a resolution of the Faculty Executive Committee that's up for a confirmation vote by the Faculty Council. I'm going to share my screen to show you the resolution and give you a moment to take a look at it. And then I'm going to explain it and also explain what the nature of the confirmation vote is. So 1 second, and I will share my screen. Okay, you should be able, Mimi, will you give me the thumbs up if you can see the resolution? Thank you. Okay, I'll give you a moment to read what it says. And you should have received it with your agenda. Okay, so the topic of this resolution is the development of standards and procedures for making decisions to cancel classes in response to student and faculty needs, such as mental health and wellness during times of crisis. That's the general topic. The nature of the resolution is that it's asking one of our committees to do a study and make recommendations. So the resolution itself does not take any action other than referring a matter for study and further recommendations and a report back to this council for further consideration at a later date. The faculty code gives the faculty council a significant role in determining matters of educational policy. And the purpose of the resolution was to formally refer the matter to the Educational Policy Committee for its further study and its recommendations. We did this formally by resolution rather than just an informal request of the committee chair, because the code is pretty tightly written about how matters may be taken up by the Educational Policy Committee, and it requires a formal referral. The referral was made by the Faculty Executive Committee on October 11th. And the reason for that was because if we had waited for this meeting of the Faculty Council, the Educational Policy Committee would not have been able to begin its study until it meets next in December. And we wanted to go ahead and give them the opportunity to consider the resolution and plan how they were going to study. So the FEC voted to allow the Educational Policy Committee to go ahead and get started. However, this is one of the types of resolutions that Faculty Executive Committee sometimes passes that requires confirmation by the Faculty Council. So it's being presented to Faculty Council today for a vote of confirmation. A vote of confirmation is special in this respect. It's strictly an up or down vote on what you see in front of you. There is no opportunity to amend the resolution. You can vote to approve the resolution. You can vote not to approve the resolution, but we can't take any amendments on the resolution. It's basically a ratification. So I see there's a hand up already, but the way I would like to proceed is to ask first if there is a motion to confirm the resolution and then a second. And once we have the motion and second on the table, we can take discussion and questions before we have the vote. So is there a motion to confirm the resolution?
So moved, Deb Eichert.
So moved by Deb.
Eric Muller seconds.
Second by Eric. Thank you. Okay, so now that we have a motion and a second, we can have discussion or questions. Deb?
I think there are some very relevant questions in the chat. If you could address that, and on a personal note, I think this is a great step, and I'm just curious how soon we could implement it based on the EPA committee's recommendation.
Okay. So thank you for drawing my attention to the chat. I see that Vaughn Upshaw has asked if the policy, Vaughn from the Gilling School has asked if the policy is going to affect multiple class cancellations or apply to individual faculty making a decision to cancel a class. And I'll just repeat again that this is not a resolution to create a policy. It is for the Educational Policy Committee to study to the matter and then come back to the Faculty Council with recommendations. And the specific matters that the FEC asked the committee to consider are listed in the resolution, but the last one is a catch-all so that they could consider those other matters as well. But this is for them to study and make recommendations. No action as a result. No further questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Last call. Okay, thank you. So we're going to vote by Zoom poll. And so now I'm going to repeat myself again in case anyone's joined us and say, please do not vote unless you are a member of Faculty Council. If you might see the poll even if you're not a member of Faculty Council, but this will proceed more efficiently if we can do it by Zoom. And if it's Faculty Council members only, the names of those who vote will be associated with their votes. So we will have a record. This is not a secret vote. So I will ask Helena, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will ask Helena if she can open the poll for the votes. And I'm going to leave it to Helena to decide when the votes have slowed down and we can close the vote and let us know the results. Okay, well, that looks pretty straightforward. We have 100% in favor. So thank you all for that. And that is the conclusion of the business portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Jill. And at this point, we'd like to invite our Chancellor to give remarks.
Thanks, Mimi. And it's great to be with all of you this afternoon. It's a beautiful Carolina blue sky out there today on homecoming, the front end of homecoming weekend. And so I hope you'll get an opportunity to get out across campus at some point today or over the weekend. A lot of our alumni are back on campus. We have a lot of our boards, advisory boards, and alumni groups back on campus this weekend. So we have not been able to do this in quite a while, and so there's an eagerness to get out and enjoy this magical place. And I hope you get to do some of that as well. The end of the semester is quickly approaching. I remember back in June and July when there was still a lot of uncertainty regarding the start of that fall semester. That there were many of us just saying, "Gosh, I can't wait if we can just get to Thanksgiving." And so we are sitting here now at finishing the first week in November, and Thanksgiving is in sight. And so I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your support of our students and our community during what has been, in many ways, a very successful semester, but yet one that has also brought about many challenges, as you well know, especially over the past month. And I know that we're going to talk more about that later in the meeting, but I also want to take an opportunity to thank so many of you for helping to make the 2020 commencement weekend on October the 9th and 10th such an incredible moment in the life of our university, and certainly for the class of 2020. I'm so glad that we were able to give our pandemic era graduates, as they've come to be known, the kind of celebration that they deserved. And so I know there were several of you that had a chance to participate, and I really appreciate that. I'm going to focus my comments today on three areas. I'm going to say a little about the AAU President's meeting that I had the opportunity to attend last Monday and Tuesday in Washington, D.C. I want to say a little bit about our ongoing COVID response, and then wrap up with some comments about our mental health and well-being, opportunities and priorities as we think about the health and well-being of our students, our faculty, and our staff. Because I think, as Mimi has already said, this extends beyond our students, and I know that many of our employees, faculty, and staff are tired, and it's been a really long year, and especially a long semester. So first, just to touch on the AAU President's meeting. This is the AAU Presidents and Chancellors meet twice a year. This is the first time that we've had the opportunity to meet in person in over 2 years. And it was great to be alongside colleagues at the America's leading research universities. There are 66 AAU institutions, and we had about 55 of the presidents and chancellors in attendance at the meeting. And there were several topics of great interest that were discussed to learn from each other and to develop best practices. Some of those were around COVID protocols. We endorsed a new sexual harassment policy that we're asking all AAU institutions to consider adopting. There was a great session on the role of universities in promoting democracy and certainly teaching democracy across the country. So these are all relevant topics here at UNC-Chapel Hill, and had it was nice to be in person talking about these important topics. I then had the opportunity to participate on a panel with 3 other AAU presidents who were each paired with a president or chancellor from an HBCU institution. And I had the great fortune of speaking alongside Chancellor Harold Martin of North Carolina A&T on an exciting partnership that we're developing between our 2 universities. And I mentioned this briefly in my campus message from last week, but the goal is to work with North Carolina A&T to help them reach R1 status and to become a top-tier research university. There are 11 HBCUs in the country that are currently have R2 status, and North Carolina A&T is probably the closest of those 11 at reaching Research 1 status. So we already have a long history of existing research and faculty collaborations, of sharing the talent that has helped make both of our institutions stronger. And I think this initiative is going to allow us to do that in a really important way. Moving forward, we're going expand and build some research infrastructure to facilitate broader and deeper partnerships. Both Chancellor Martin and I have committed $500,000 to seed this infrastructure initiative. This came as part of my Chancellor's Regent Society giving that where in the campaign they have provided some funding for special initiatives like this. So I'm pleased that we were able to deliver on this promise to try to build stronger partnerships with our sister institutions across the state. It'll focus on four main areas, the first being data science, second being environment and climate, third on cybersecurity, and the fourth on health disparities. These are areas that intersect nicely with our creativity hubs that Vice Chancellor Terry Magnuson has created through the Office of Sponsored Research. And we have a lot of faculty and talent in these four areas. And so we're going to put a call out soon for proposals that would allow partnerships to be built with, or to strengthen partnerships that already exist with faculty from North Carolina A&T to seed projects. And so we know that the growth and prosperity of North Carolina depends on building broad ecosystems of talent and expertise, and that means working closely with talented faculty across the UNC system. So A&T is a national powerhouse in research and already the nation's largest HBCU. And so I think this partnership will make both universities better, and I look forward to sharing more about it as it evolves. Second, we did announce last month, earlier in the month, I guess at the end of the month, a vaccine requirement to comply with the recent executive order from the Biden administration. Since vaccines became available last spring, we've worked diligently to try to make them available to everyone on campus. We've been successful in that regard. And as you've been following the dashboard, we're sitting right there around 94% of our students and faculty are vaccinated, and we're at about 86% of our staff that have attested to their vaccination. And the commitment of our students, faculty, and staff really has helped make Chapel Hill one of the most vaccinated communities in the state, and we're going to continue to strengthen those protections for the benefit of everyone on campus. And we have asked our public health experts, including Dr. Barzin, to evaluate what the spring semester should look like, what testing and what the community standards should look like. And we continue to have regular meetings around this and hope to have some official updates soon. But I do want to just share that we do anticipate needing to continue our indoor mask policy. We had a conversation about that earlier this week, and are considering the possibility of symptomatic only testing following a 2 to 3 week reentry period following winter break. But that change would only be made if the trends and the data would support such a change. So our team's going to continue to monitor this. I'm going to continue to bring these ideas and potential modifications to anything that we're doing before CCAC, and I will be prepared to once we have more information to set up a meeting to do that. Third and finally, I just want to we know the pandemic has not only threatened our physical health, but has also taken a toll on our mental well-being. The mental health crisis affecting our community is part of a national trend, one that we know was trending in that direction before the pandemic, but it certainly has been compounded by the effects of the past 19-20 months. And so a troubling pattern that we've seen is apparent even as we sit here today, and it's why we're putting a lot in place to think about changes that we might put in place. We realize that we're not going to solve this generational crisis quickly or easily, but we're going to do everything to support our students, faculty, and staff in every way that we can. We have invested more resources into counseling and crisis intervention over the past year, and we've urged our students to look out for one another and to build a culture of support. I just want to again thank you, our faculty, for the compassion that so many of you have shown our students, especially those students who I've sat with in my office who were the roommates and suite mates of students that we've lost this past year. And I will tell you that I heard loud and clear how compassionate, flexible, and caring many of our faculty have been, understanding the trauma that these students are experiencing with the loss of a close friend, roommate, or suite mate. And so I just want to thank you for that. And we are continuing to look at ways in which we can learn from this experience. We've added, as you know, we had a wellness day back on October the 12th. We are going to be adding at least one wellness day to the spring semester, to the spring calendar. Lauren DeGrazia, a registrar, and her team have looked at options. There's not a lot of flexibility there, but we do believe we have the ability to add in at least one wellness day. And we'll be sharing more about that over the next few weeks so that our faculty will have adequate time to plan. And we're already looking at the 2022-23 academic calendar to determine where we can include some wellness days in next year's calendar as well. And even with the possibility that it may be that we need to think about moving commencement back a week to spread the semester out a bit. There are a lot of factors that go into that as we sort of a domino effect as we think about what would be needed for summer school and the needs of our faculty, staff, students around this. But I just want you to know that I have asked Assistant Provost and Registrar Lauren DeGrazia to work in a coordinated manner with the leadership of the Ed Policy Committee to formalize and ensure faculty input on any future academic calendar decisions. I think this is in line with the resolution that has just been passed. So we have to work together and have to have faculty input in this. And then finally, I think we are convening the mental health summit on November the 15th to hear from our community and to define a campus-wide response to this. This is a shared challenge, and Mimi's already referenced it. I want to thank you, Mimi, for your stepping up, wanting to be a part of this and to have this part of our conversation today. We are working closely alongside Dr. Samantha Meltzer-Brody and Vice Chancellor Amy Johnson, who you're going to be hearing from shortly. They've done an incredible job alongside Amy Hertel in my office, really to put together what I think is going to be an important summit for our campus. The rise in mental health struggles among young people isn't confined to Carolina or to college campuses, and this is a nationwide problem, one that again has been building for years, and that was part of our conversations up in DC last week. And every campus is challenged by this, and it has many causes, and it'll need to be met with many solutions that extend beyond the bounds of our campus and involve our whole society. So I'm in wrapping up my comments, I just want to say that I'm very confident that we can bring the unique resources and expertise to Carolina to help find those solutions that'll benefit, again, not just our own students, but the broader society. I think that's what a leading public research university does, as we help to find solutions to challenging problems that society is facing, and teaching us to adapt and to take advantage of the available resources. So I'm going to stop there. And the only other update I did want to provide, because I know it's on the minds of many, but and that is that our provost search continues to go as scheduled, as planned, and I do hope that we will be able to make an announcement of that by mid-November, as I had discussed at one of our previous meetings here. And I want to thank all of you those of you that were part of either participating in the search committee and or the small confidential stakeholder meetings that were held when the candidates were here on campus. So again, I hope to provide updates here within the next 10 days to 2 weeks. So with that, I'll stop and turn it, I'm happy to open up the questions, turn it back to you, Mimi.
We have a few questions for you, it looks like. So I think we have Deb first, then Stuart Gold, then Eric is what I see.
Chancellor Gaskovich, thank you for taking the time and trouble to meet with us. By last count, we have 148 people attending this session, 98 in person, 98 in this Zoom session, and 50 watching us on YouTube. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for a successful semester. I think we have done very well in terms of the COVID, and it was nice to hear you at the Tar Heel bus tour reunion saying that you are planning to resume the Tar Heel bus tour, and that also reflects the engagement we have in other parts of the state. And the NCANT step is a very welcome step. As you know, NCANT has many common things that we can collaborate on. I wanted to take a minute to talk about spring 2020 semester. As you will recall, in fall 2020, you set up the CCAT, which comprised 32 members, or by last count, maybe 30. And they helped all of us plan. And I thought that was a great decision. And I was just wondering and curious whether you are planning a similar thing for spring 2020, because as you know, most of us are looking forward to an on-campus experience, but given all of the things that are happening with the pandemic, we also have the mental health concerns. So I was just wondering, and you mentioned about extending the commencement and other things, but I just wanted to seek your help to see what kind of planning we all can do for spring 2020 semester.
Sure. So appreciate the question. And as I mentioned in my comments, I do plan to bring the group back together when we have some decisions that we need some input on. Unfortunately, things have gone smoothly this semester with regard to the COVID numbers. Our positivity rate for the past few weeks, if you've looked at the dashboard, has been down like 0.25%. And so I think things are working well. And so we will have the possibility of needing some feedback about planning for wellness days. And as I said, there's not a lot of room in that spring semester calendar. We need to continue to follow the data. I was actually talking to Jill Moore earlier today about just some of the trends that the state epidemiologist is providing and data there. And so we want to continue to follow that and to see if we're going to, how we might be able to predict what things will look like come January 1st, which will be just about 10, 12 days out from the start of that spring semester. So I do plan to bring the group back together, but I'd like to do it whenever we have a little more information and some decisions that where I think we need the community to weigh in on.
So are we planning a full in-person semester?
That is the plan right now. If I'm assuming we're going to be able to end this semester with a full in-person semester, I would anticipate, based on the data that we see today and the trends, the way they're being modeled, I certainly anticipate that we'll be able to start that semester with full in-person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stuart?
Thanks. My question's been answered.
Okay, terrific. All right, Eric and then Jan. Eric, you're up. Or should we go to Jan? Jan, let's have you and then we'll come back to Eric.
Thank you. I have a brief question. I'm very happy to see that the campus is being run more and more as business as usual. I must say that I was not expecting that for this semester, but I was very happy to see that the decision that the university did seemed to have been the right one. So thank you for doing them. I have a sort of a niche question. When do you expect the process for international conference attendance go to business as usual? Namely, no need to have a provost look it over.
Yeah, great question, Jan. I cannot wait for that myself, quite honestly. That trip up to DC that I went on for the AAU president's meeting, I was joking with my wife. I said I almost needed a checklist to be able to pack my suitcase. It had been so long since I had packed a suitcase for a conference. So I am with you. Barbara Stevenson and her team over in global affairs are doing a great job of tracking the regions of the world that are likely going to be safest to travel to this spring. She gave a wonderful presentation earlier this week on our global initiatives and the fact that while many universities sort of just said they set study abroad aside this semester, we actually kept it alive and moving. And now, granted, we're not in many countries would like to be, but I do think that we'll reach a place if the trends continue as they are, where we will be able to travel more freely across the globe, I hope, by sometime early this spring. And Barbara's team is, again, doing a great job of tracking this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and last question goes to Eric, and then we'll move on.
Sorry about the glitch there a moment ago.
Hi,
Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Thank you for being with us and for the various pieces of great news that you shared with us. I wanted to ask a follow-up about the decision-making about wellness days. It's great that one is in the works for the spring. Given that we passed the resolution just a little while ago about the referral to the Education Committee, I wanted to ask whether you said something along the lines of that you think it's very important to have faculty input into the scheduling of wellness days. The resolution, as I read it at least, sort of referred to the Education Committee the question of including who should be the decision maker about wellness days. So I wanted to see whether those two things are out of alignment with each other or whether they're overlapping with each other.
I mean, I would, as I've said, I believe that we need faculty input on this. The wellness day that we put in place for October the 12th needed to happen. Our leadership team decided that we needed to, and it was based on input from students that I had been meeting with over the course of that very challenging weekend. A number of other faculty had a conversation with Mimi, and we just felt that we needed to make a decision on that one. And I will tell you, it was without question the right decision was made. So I think moving forward, for this coming spring, we have very limited options. I think we have the possibility of 2 or 3 days that we could place the one wellness day. As you know, there are accreditation issues. We have to have a certain number of contact hours for the semester in order to meet our accreditation requirements. And so I want to engage Ed Policy Committee on, would faculty think there's a better time within the semester, that we can place that one day. But moving forward, I think that we will need input from faculty if we're going to think about extending the semester beyond, for a week and building in multiple wellness days. And so I want to engage the Ed Policy Committee on that. I think that these decisions need to be made through a shared governance approach. There are a lot of factors that weigh into decisions when a day comes up. We have a meteorologist that helps us decide, whether we should cancel classes or go into a delayed start because of weather. There are health and safety issues with our, environmental health and safety team that weigh into these. And I think faculty are a very important, part of those decisions. So I see it aligning with the resolution in that if I understand it, it's that faculty should have input in these decisions. I don't see the faculty solely making the decision.
We also learned, Kevin, I think you and I had a conversation in which you brought up that there is a calendar committee and that there should be faculty representation on that calendar committee. So that's something that we're sort of working on too, so that the resolution would be something to be studied with recommendations. But this calendar committee exists. And I think you had thought that there was faculty representation on it, but it sounds like maybe there's been some drift, so we can write that little part of the ship.
Exactly. And that's actually happening. Lauren DeGrazia is reaching out to Rachel Penton, I believe, is the chair of the policy committee. And so I did check in earlier today to see if she had in fact done that yet, but I think that Lauren is trying to reach out to Rachel next week, because that committee will be convened again here soon. And Rachel, or whoever sits in that role as chair of the policy committee, will have a seat on that academic calendar committee.
Thank you, Kevin.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor. And I think, it looks like Rachel is responding in the chat.
Great.
Planning to talk with Lauren next week. So Rachel is an elected representative of the faculty chairing the Educational Policy Committee. So that seems like it's the right alignment between who should be doing what. Let's see. Our next agenda item is to talk about the libraries once again, and from a different vantage point, perhaps than we've talked about it before. And we do have with us Elaine Westbrooks, and then we have colleagues that are going to be coming in from the University of California to talk a little bit about what they've done. They joined us, some of them joined us at FEC on Monday. And Jill and Elaine and I had a big conversation even before that. So we've had a lot of conversation and very much appreciate our faculty colleagues at the University of California system joining us for this conversation. As this issue came up with the libraries, and certainly many faculty members from across campus were writing to me, writing to Elaine, talking about the difficulty of the situation and their concerns. I called Elaine and asked for sort of a crash course in the problem, because I'm not an expert in libraries, as many of you might be much more expert than me. And as I understood it, there are sort of three buckets of problem. The first bucket being an immediate crisis that could be perhaps solved with some reallocation of funding. Then there's a shorter term crisis that has been evolving over probably 15 to 20 years. That's about the need for recurring funds for the library. And then there is the wider crisis that concerns the business of academic publishing and how we as faculty engage with that. And so, as I understand it, the Chancellor, the indications from the Board of Trustees, Elaine, her staff, they are all in conversation about those first two buckets. And so as a faculty, we could make statements, we could have resolutions, we could write letters about how we think all of that should go. And I am completely amenable to doing those sorts of things. And I also want us to think about, are there other things that we could do as a faculty that would also speak to aspects of this question? And it sounds like that's where we might have some things to learn, or at least consider, from our colleagues in California. And Elaine has talked with them and of course knows them very, very well, and brought their approach to my attention. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Elaine, and then we'll bring our UC colleagues into the conversation.
Thanks, Mimi. I really want to applaud you for really having the energy to dig into this really sticky issue. And so one thing I do want to say is that one of the challenges we have is that open access in some circles has gotten a really bad name, right? And what we're trying to say is open access is not inferior. Open access journals and open access articles are peer-reviewed articles, right? It so happens that many of these journals are predatory and are not peer-reviewed, but we don't want to conflate those. Like, there are high quality open access articles and journals that we need to embrace more. One thing I would also like to say is open access is not completely foreign to this university. Starting in 2005, the Faculty Council passed a resolution about faculty author rights. 10 years after that, in 2015, the Faculty Council passed another resolution on our open access policy, which became the current open access policy that we have. And then in 2019, we also passed a resolution on containing the cost of published research, particularly focusing on the library ceasing its practice of signing confidentiality clauses and non-disclosure agreements. So we do, in fact, have a history on this campus. And we are at the point now with this budget cut and with the inflation and all these circumstances well, we have a tremendous opportunity to do something transformative. And that's where our friends from the University of California come in. I'd like to introduce Rich Snyder, who's at the University of California at San Francisco. And I'm going to turn it over to Rich because he can do a wonderful job of explaining what California has done. And I really want us to think about what Rich is telling us and how the faculty and researchers at this university, and I include students as well, can mobilize and to be a part of the solution. So I'll turn it over to you, Rich.
Thanks, Elaine. And thank you very much to Mimi and Jill for giving me the opportunity to participate in your meeting today. Full disclosure, I got my PhD at a small school down the road from you all in Durham. I won't mention the name, but I just thought you should know that up front. I am a basic science researcher. I've been at University of California, San Francisco since 1998. I'm a professor in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery, but I'm a basic scientist and I study how the skeleton develops. In addition to my research, I've had a long history for about 17 years now of being committed to helping transform the system by which we communicate our research outputs, the system of scholarly communication. From the beginning, as an author, I always felt like there was something inherently wrong with the way that we would transfer our rights to commercial publishers and then expect our libraries to buy back access to that content that we generated with our own, blood and sweat and tears often. So in addition to that, we all peer review for the publishing, for the journals for free, and many of us serve as editors for free. So we contribute a lot to the publishing ecosystem. And yet the commercial publishers, they reap tremendous profits on the order of 35–40% profit margins, which are greater than some of the biggest tech companies like Google and Apple, for example. So what struck me as inherently unfair about the system, in addition to authors losing their rights, was the fact that as a public institution like yours, we were participating in a system where the taxpayers who paid for our FTEs and oftentimes paid for our research didn't have any access to the content that we were generating. And so I felt that there had to be a better way that we could be stewards of these public resources and benefit the taxpayers of California, or in your case, the taxpayers in North Carolina. And the system that really, the model that was attractive for many of us was this idea that we would simply shift the cost of publishing from the subscription side, where you had to pay to read, to invest more in the publication side. We recognize that publishing has a cost, but that we believe that there was an alternative that would allow us to build into the system, a new system, something that's more sustainable and something that's more in line with our values and our mission as a public institution. And so like you, we passed an open access policy. We did that in 2012 and 2013. And I was involved in writing the policy for the UC system. And then in about 2017, 2018, we decided as a faculty that we would put together a document, a kind of a declaration of rights and principles that kind of stated what our values were and what we wanted the university to do with the money that it was spending on our behalf to support our research enterprise. And the bottom line is what we really pushed our university to do was to reinvest the subscription money that they had been spending year after year with these commercial publishers, often with ridiculous increases in rates of subscriptions that greatly outpace the cost of living increase or any other kinds of increases, sometimes on the order of 10–15% on a subscription renewal that was compounded year after year. We just thought that the publishers had us between a rock and a hard place because we as researchers needed access, and our libraries felt like they had to do whatever they could to support access to that content. And so we decided that we would push our university, we as faculty, to partner with the library to reinvest all of our subscription money in support of open access publishing. And we recognized early on that we'd have a hard time, to the point that Elaine made, a hard time convincing a lot of our faculty that they should publish in new, unestablished open access journals. And the model that we decided to work on was to transform the existing canon of literature, work with the existing publishers, Wiley, Springer Nature, Elsevier, Sage, all of the big publishers, to work with them to not create new journals that would become open access journals, but to take their existing journals and flip those to open access and allow us to use our subscription money to cover the cost of publishing upfront so that everyone would have access to the content that we publish, not just in California, but across the world. And so we began to do that. We entered into long negotiations with Elsevier and with Springer Nature and many other publishers. We were in a stalemate with Elsevier. They were unwilling to budge. They wanted to increase the amount of money that we spent, especially if we wanted to publish our work as open access. And again, just to define open access, what that means is that anybody can read that work. Anybody can reuse the content in that work, but we could publish that work in an existing journal. So my professional society has a journal that's over 150 years old. What I wanted to be able to do is to continue publishing in that journal, not have to publish in a new journal. And also by doing so, we could keep intact the existing structure of peer review and editorial management and all the things that we value with the current system and still be able to make our work freely available. And you might have heard Elsevier was unwilling to work with us on this. And so we went for a period of about 2.5 years out of contract with Elsevier. We had almost 2 years of no access to Elsevier content. And I'll just tell you as an aside, we did fine. Our faculty, our researchers, our students found alternative ways, working closely with the library to get access to any content that they wanted. And it made many of us question why we were spending $15 million a year with Elsevier to buy access to content that we and many of our colleagues had generated for free. But at the end of the day, we were able to reach an agreement. I serve on a negotiating team. There's 5 members on the negotiating team. 3 of them are faculty, a professor of economics, a professor of law, and myself, as well as representatives from the library. And we've been able to negotiate with these commercial publishers. And our academic senate has been fully supportive. We've made all kinds of statements from our senate in support of what we're doing. The goal here is not to force people to publish in journals that they're not familiar with or that they don't think are high enough quality. The goal here is to create a business model that supports open access publishing in any journal that an author chooses to publish in. And so, as I said, this has had strong backing from the faculty. We've made lots of statements in support of our libraries on this. And I guess what I would say to you all in this moment, you find yourself here at this crossroads where you're confronting this budget crisis. And I would ask you to consider that this be an opportunity for you to reevaluate the way that you spend your money as a public institution, the way that you support the existing system, the subscription system, which is a closed system that doesn't allow, like I said, taxpayers or patients advocates or other researchers in developing countries. And we think that that the open access system is a much more equitable system where anybody can read. And by using subscription monies from institutions to cover the costs of publishing, we enable any author who has no grant money or no other research funds to publish using the library's subscription money. What we do ask is that any author who does have grant money, and grant money that is only budgeted for publication, to help contribute to the costs of publishing. And so in our case, every author in the UC system gets $1,000 towards publishing. Any author that doesn't have any research funds gets the full cost covered by the library, and any author who does have research funds, and that's somewhere on the order of about 20% of our authors, we ask them to contribute the balance between the $1,000 that the library contributes and whatever the cost of publishing is. So that's kind of what we've done in a nutshell. I will stop there because I think more importantly would be for me to help answer questions that you all might have, or just talk about some of the strategies that we've used. So Elaine, unless there's anything else specific you'd like me to talk about, I'll just stop there.
Rich, can you talk a little bit about the high-level support that you got through this process?
Sure. Yeah, we've had support from the president of our university, our vice chancellors for research, so really strong support on the administrative side. And I believe that there were university presidents at the part of the discussions was around open science and open access and the role that universities play in North America in helping to shape the future of scholarly communication. We see big movements in Europe around this. Many of the countries in Europe at the level of the funders and the level of the university systems and the governments are all mandating open access for all academic research. And we're beginning to see that happening here in the States. We've had strong support from our administration on almost every level, strong support from the libraries, and unwavering support from our faculty. We've had so many unanimous votes around supporting these initiatives, whether it's about walking away from Elsevier, whether it's supporting our libraries and making decisions to reinvest our subscription monies into support of publishing, open access publishing. And so, these are things that once faculty understand the nature of the problem, the amount of money that's being extracted from the system by the commercial publishers in the way of profits, the way that the system can be simply realigned, not by changing the way we publish or what we publish or how we publish, but simply changing the business model, that there are tremendous benefits to society in terms of access. And we've all seen that. I mean, what we saw with the COVID literature, we worked with the federal government and the universities, worked with the publishers to convince the publishers that we were in a public health crisis, and that we wanted everything that had anything to do with COVID to be made immediately available to anybody in the world. And see, we saw sequence data become immediately available, and we saw a standard of care and all kinds of best practices being made immediately available to the whole world. And that has allowed us to have standards of care that have improved dramatically in the course of a year, or a vaccine that has come about so rapidly. And imagine, and that's all, I would argue that is all because of the open access commitment that we force the publishers to embrace. And imagine if we were doing the same thing for cancer research, for Alzheimer's, for Parkinson's, for every disease possible, for global, for the climate crisis. You could imagine what the pace of discovery would look like in all of these disciplines if everything was freely available to everyone. And so that's really the goal here, is figuring out a way to leverage the resources that you do have, to spend them in a more efficient way, in a more sustainable way, and something that in a way that ultimately benefits the world at large.
Rich, I just want to let everybody know about the documents that you all shared with us. Those should all be linked to your agenda. There's a link on the faculty governance website where all of those are available, that go through, letters that went back and forth, principles related to this, a YouTube video of a discussion with your Board of Regents. I mean, all really, really informative in terms of digging into this process and how it happened.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mimi. I would tell you all that we have on the Office of Scholarly Communications at the University of California Office of the President, we have a tremendous amount of resources for journal editors, for authors, for libraries, for administrators, all about how to kind of go through this process at your own institution. And so we've created templates, we've created negotiation tools, we've created all kinds of resources for folks, in addition to all of the documents that our faculty have generated through our academic senate. So yes, that's all linked in your agendas. I see there's a question in the chat from Vaughn Upshaw, and I'd like to address that because I just really want to point out this, make a point about this, because as I said, the common misperception, and Elaine brought this up right from the beginning, is that open access is a different way of a different system of peer review, or it's lower quality journals. And there are many journals, open access journals out there, predatory journals that have been feeding off this idea that people would pay to publish. And because of that, what we decided to do was take a slightly different path. And that is, like I said, to convert the existing journals to open access. And so in our agreement with Elsevier, all UC authors can publish in any of the Cell Press titles, any of the Lancet titles, in any title in the Elsevier portfolio as an open access article. So we cover the costs for those open access articles up front, and we pass those so that that article will then be made freely available to anyone to read. So this idea that we're asking authors to go somewhere else, we're not. We're telling authors they can publish in every journal that they've always published in, that they feel comfortable in, that have high impact factors, or that are important for their disciplines, important for tenure. The goal is to take those journals and make them open access. And that's what we've done. For UC authors, if you're publishing in Springer Nature, if you're publishing in Elsevier, if you're publishing in PNAS, if you're publishing in many other journals, we have a whole list. Right now, we're pretty much at about 50% of our output based on what we're publishing is able to be made open access by the University of California. And our goal is to get 100%. We want all of our content to be made freely available to the world. And so again, that's not asking faculty to consider different journals. It's asking them to consider the same journals, or asking them whether they have resources to help cover the cost or they need help from the library to do so. Okay, so, and then
there are multiple points. I think this one from Charlotte in the chat is something that.
Great question. So Charlotte, if I may, I'd like to address that point. Again, it's a really important point. Charlotte says what this means is that labs with the resources can afford to make their work fully available, while less well-funded scientists have work hidden behind paywalls. And as I said to you, because what we've decided to do is reallocate our subscription monies, about $40 million a year from the University of California in subscription spend. What we've decided to do is reallocate that to give it to all the authors who are less well-funded. Okay, so we've got so many authors in humanities and social sciences and other disciplines that don't have any grant money. And so those subscription monies are there to support those authors and allow disciplines that historically do not have a track record in publishing open access to allow them to do so. So we've got this great agreement with Cambridge University Press that has a large portfolio of social sciences and humanities. All of those authors published in those journals can now publish those works open access with no contribution from them or no ask from them whatsoever. It's all covered by the library. Does that make sense? Charlotte, I'm hoping that answers your question.
Yes, I agree with you. I was answering someone else's question.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Okay, perfect.
All right, so we have a couple hands up. We have Deb and Cal. Other things are coming in the chat too. Deb, do you want to go ahead?
Dr. Snyder, it's great to see you, and it's in virtually, and I appreciate your leadership in the UC system. And I have read all of the things that you have been doing, and I'm a faculty member in the School of Journalism here, and I feel your issues resonate with us, but it not only resonates in a big university like ours or yours. I think this also has some effect in private universities like Duke University, where you went in 1990s. And so I wanted to ask you two questions that are related. One is the effort that you are putting in. I think it's true for all universities, whether they are public, private, or small universities. So I was wondering if your campaign or the UC faculty's move has resonated with other campuses. And second, I think there is a follow-up question here where, you talked about Elsevier, you talked about Cambridge University Press, but as you know, there are other big fours like Sage, Rutledge, and other institutions that have a lot of these journals, and they, I think, exploit the whole thing in a similar way that you outlined.
Right. Well, thanks for that, Deb. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I agree. This is not just a mission for public institutions. This is a mission for all academics who believe that there's a better way to communicate. There's so much data out there to show that when people are searching for content, for doing research, they're not finding the content that is most relevant. They're finding the content that is the most available. And so those articles that are freely available are the ones that are more highly cited, the more highly downloaded. There's all kinds of studies out there, really robust empirical data to show that. Yes, I'm hopeful that many other institutions will join in. We've been having conversations with lots of different private institutions as well, not just state universities. Also, not just research intensive universities. There are the Cal State system in California, for example, has a publish and read agreement where with Elsevier, their subscription payment, their reading payment to read subscription content also allows all of their authors to publish for free in any Elsevier journal. So there's no additional cost to the university or to the authors because they're already paying enough in subscriptions to cover the publishing portion that a research institution would have to pay for separately. So I think you raise a really good point. And to these other publishers, yes, our intention, every publisher has been made aware that our goal is to work with every single publisher over the next several years to transform our current subscription agreements into publish and read agreements. We have made a commitment to no longer sign any subscription agreements with any publishers.
Thank you.
Last question goes to Cal, and then
Okay.
And I also want to bring up what Betsy Olson has put in the chat, which would be what would be our most important first step. And I imagine that our administrative board of the libraries, I see that Kurt Gilliland is with us, and Elaine could probably take this and run with it, and may, for all I know, I'll be already doing all of that. So I don't want to undermine work that's already in progress, but so I just want to affirm that. But if you do have suggestions for first steps, that would be terrific. And Cal, please pose your question.
Sure. So I had hinted at that. So Cal Lee at the School of Information and Library Science, and I had hinted at it in a chat question that I posed, but I think it really was punctuated by your statement of never paying any money for subscriptions. Is just that, I think it's important to remind everyone of these various forces, Mimi, that you talked about at the very beginning of the discussion, that I wholeheartedly support almost everything people have said in terms of the virtues of open access, but I really, really hope that we don't face the danger of essentially justifying massive cuts to the library through the notion that open access is free, right? Because I think, first of all, there's the notion that requiring authors to pay to be published is not the only viable business model, and it can actually completely shut down the publication programs of some professional associations who make their money that way, right? And the other just being that there clearly are always going to be things that have costs associated with them, because that's how publishing works. And so I just, that's part of the concern that I have in the background, is just going into this with the full knowledge that our library's budget has just been decimated, to not see this as, I think conveniently can be seen as a way to pull resources away from the library, because it looks like publications are free now. And I'm not saying that anyone who's just spoken is implying that, but I have a serious concern that can be the takeaway when decisions start to be made.
Cal, I have to tell you, those are awesome, fantastic points. It's exactly the kinds of, conversations that we've had with our administration, that that we're doing this, this mission alignment between how we spend our money and the system that we're trying to build is not an opportunity for the administration to say, oh, well, we don't have to, pay the libraries, we don't have to cover these costs, let's just move all of these expenses onto the backs of researchers. So we have had statements from our Senate, we've also had commitments from our leadership that this is not what the plan is, that's yes, you have a budget cut, and we've had budget cuts as well. But that over the long term, this is not just, robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, and just, shifting monies from, a place where the university should be spending money, which is, libraries. Theoretically, those monies are coming from the indirects, from the grants that we bring in and from other sources. And it's really important that get a commitment from your administration that they will continue to invest in the research enterprise and the academic enterprise around publishing. So that's really important. And I should say, to your other point around us never paying another subscription, that was kind of hyperbole. What I really meant to say was, we're not going to pay for subscriptions unless they include open access publishing. So
Sure.
we're changing the language. So it's not about subscriptions, it's more about reading.
Yep.
So for example, in the nature journals, they have what's a lot of valuable front matter in addition to the research content. We recognize that we might need to pay some subscription for that access to that front matter, the news and all of the other stuff. And to your point about professional societies, we are working constantly with professional societies. All the faculty on these committees are members of professional societies. We understand how vital it is that that professional societies receive revenue from their journals. And we have been working with the publishers and the societies to make sure that this system does not also break the backs of professional societies. We all benefit, our graduate students benefit from travel awards, and we all get all kinds of resources that come out of our journals that support our societies. And so, being keenly aware of that and making sure that we're not doing anything that disrupts the publishing system or the way that we support our societies. And so that is absolutely part of the conversation. And there've been entire, 2-day symposia that I participated in that I've just been on this topic alone. So we could really go on. I'm happy to talk with anybody one-on-one if you have concerns or questions or don't understand the business model. I'd be happy to set up a time and talk with people. So Cal, hopefully that answers some of your.
Absolutely. And I knew you were very cognizant of all these issues, but I really appreciate you expressing them to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
so there's a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I hate to cut this discussion off. We do need to move into our next agenda item. And I'm wondering if maybe what we could do is at this point kind of turn this over to Elaine and to the administrative board of the libraries, to Kurt, to have more conversation, to engage, whether that's faculty executive committee, to engage the faculty council writ large in next steps as that becomes clear as to what the path forward might be. So I'm going to defer your question, Beth, if you don't mind, so that we can move forward. I'm sorry about that. I want to give just a huge thank you to Rich Schneider and to Elaine for all that she is doing. Really very grateful, Rich, for you coming to talk with us multiple times over the course of the last week, and for your colleagues and for sharing all of your documents and for really pioneering this space.
Happy to do it. Please let me know how I can help.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I'm available as well. I'm on a call with the UC system every month. And so I'm very well aware of what they're doing. And they're a unit of 10, we're a unit of 1. So there's a scale difference, but please don't hesitate to contact me with your ideas. And Rich, thank you so much for helping us out and joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to move into a discussion about mental health and well-being on campus. This is in preparation for this upcoming mental health summit, and this is a chance for you all to really hear from each other, to put your experiences on the table. We want some of our leaders to hear your experience as well. We did invite Dr. Amy Johnson and Desiree Rickenberg, and as well as Alan Blattner and Avery Cook and Professor Samantha Meltzer-Brody. But I think our first, Dr. Johnson has said she would like to speak first. And but what I want to ask of all of our panelists is to really be very brief. And what I've asked them, what we're asking them to do is to simply just give us information that we need to inform this conversation, and little bits of information, so that we're not spending our time in our conversation asking questions, but rather sharing experiences. So that's what I'm hoping for today. So Amy, do you want to start us off?
Sure, glad to, Mimi. Thank you so much for inviting us here to talk today. And we do want to keep our comments very short so that we have an opportunity to hear your feedback and answer questions that you may have. And in particular, that will be the focus of our efforts. I did want to spend some time, though, laying a foundation for our student affairs team about our approach, not only to handling communications, but crises on campus, because I think that is directly relevant, obviously, to our conversation today, and an issue that I'm mindful that not everybody knows. And I know I'll just acknowledge up at the front, as others have said, that we have been an extremely difficult time, and that many of you, like us, are peppered with hundreds of questions and concerns regarding how we're approaching a particular matter with respect to student health and well-being. And I really want to thank you for your partnership in that effort. The loss of any student is a tragedy, and we have lost several in the last couple of months. You may have heard me mention in our BOT meeting yesterday that I was talking recently with one of my colleagues who is a vice president of a large top-tier public research university on the West Coast. And that person mentioned to me that they had lost 5 students. They had had 5 student deaths in the last 6 weeks. And we were struck by the fact that we have this similar experience. And sadly, these clusters of student deaths aren't really unusual. Campuses throughout the country, including Penn and Cornell and USC, and here in North Carolina at App State, have all experienced them in recent years. And how campuses respond, especially when you experience a rash of these deaths, is critically important. So for our part, in terms of the actions that we have taken, when these occur, we immediately mobilize our student affairs teams to support students both on the site and off, including involvement from our Carolina Housing and our CAPS departments, as well as the Dean of Students and Student Wellness units today. And you're going to have an opportunity to hear from some of those folks. We not only work to support those students who are immediately affected, but to connect with the various communities involved. And that can include campus residences, students, clubs and organizations, academic departments, or campus offices where the student has worked. All of that really speaks to our approach to communicating about a student death. And as many of you may know from other meetings with me, as a matter of practice, we have not sent out campus-wide notifications of student deaths or emergencies unless there is an ongoing threat to campus, due to the fact that we know that these messages can be extremely triggering for members of our community and are often more harmful than helpful. So it's critically important too that as a part of that calculation, we respect the family's privacy and their ability to make difficult personal decisions regarding any public announcements. We work very closely with the families in those circumstances regarding their preferences as it relates to any communications that we share. In all of these cases, though, it's important to know that our staff focus on providing a really coordinated, targeted support to the deceased students' known contacts and affiliate groups, in addition to working through our localized departments and campus offices to provide support to the broader community. Specific to student death notifications, I have already made some changes to our process because I have learned through our experience this year that it appears sometimes we may miss some folks in our regular notifications. So I have looped into the process directly to make sure that I contact the relevant deans, department heads, and in some cases, their faculty members myself. And finally, I just want to share in closing before we move on that we are in the process of assessing and evaluating our immediate crisis response and prevention and post-vention protocols. And in due course, I want to publish those policies and protocols publicly to address the why and the what and the how of our practice, so it's very clear and transparent to everyone. So with that, let me stop. I will also say that we are in the process right now of meeting with several partner institutions, including App State that I mentioned earlier, to benefit from their experience and expertise in this area. And we hope to continue that work and certainly value your feedback and thoughts in that process. So thanks again for the time today, Mimi.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. Avery, would you like to come into the conversation at this point?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Avery Cook. I'm the Associate and Clinical Director at Counseling and Psychological Services. And I'm going to provide just a brief overview of CAP services and how folks access us to make sure that everyone has that information. For a number of years now, CAPS has operated a walk-in service, which means all of our first appointments are available on a walk-in basis. This means that a student is able to initiate services the minute that they decide they want to. There is no delay or wait for them to start. They simply come to CAPS Monday through Friday. They fill out some brief paperwork, and they then are able to meet with a therapist that same day to develop a plan for next steps. The next steps that we have available are a wide variety of things to meet students' needs, anything from medication management services, group therapy, to individual brief therapy, which we do here at CAPS. For students that have more long-standing needs, students that have engaged in therapy in the past around something that they want to continue that work in, we help folks connect with therapists in the community, and we have referral coordination services to help with that. That's some of our therapists that will work one-on-one with the student until they're able to get connected. We work to help them overcome whatever barriers there may be to getting that care. That includes having some access to funding, having access to different insurance plans, location, all of that stuff. We also deal with students in crisis. If a student is experiencing an acute mental health episode, we will work with them around safety, and that includes doing safety plans or crisis plans to make sure that the student has the support that they need. If a student isn't able to be safe outside of the hospital, we also will facilitate a connection to the hospital and try and make it as seamless for the student as possible. This year, for the first time in a number of years, we did go to a brief wait list for our brief therapy. The wait list at its longest time was about a week out, but a couple of weeks ago, we launched a program with UWill, which is an online psychotherapy platform to be able to provide brief therapy to students immediately. So there is no longer any wait, there's no longer any delay for students to get brief therapy care. Additionally, for a couple of years now, we have had an after-hours service, CAPS 24/7. So a student is able to call CAPS anytime, day or night, weekends, holidays, and speak with a therapist immediately to get whatever they may need to help cope in the moment and to help bridge them to further support. So we no longer have any wait times. There's no longer a wait list. We're fully able to meet students' needs whenever they come about. We have more flexibility in terms of hours. UWill is able to see students outside of the traditional hours that CAPS keeps, and CAPS 24/7 is available for students that have needs beyond when they're open.
Thank you, Avery. And I'm going to ask people, I'm just going to have people hold their comments and questions for a moment so that our presenters can kind of just give us the facts that they want us to know first, and then we can have a more open conversation. Okay, so let me do that. And so next would be, I think we have Alan Blattner with us. And in particular, I was interested in asking about the RA experience. You know, if you can tell us a little bit about the training and support that RAs get, Alan.
Absolutely. Thanks again for the opportunity to be here. First, I think it's important for the group to know that we have students living on campus every day of the year, so that our support plan for them and our staffing plan needs to reflect that. And so we have multiple levels and various types of support for the residential students. That includes, at its most basic, the RA position. We have RAs that live in every building on every floor that are really the first touch point for our residential students. They are supported by community directors who are full-time professionals with master's degrees in sometimes in college student counseling, but more often in higher education administration or other similar fields, who live on campus, live in the buildings with the RAs and the students. Above them, we've got our residence life leadership staff that is on call every day of the year, as well as our senior housing staff. These resources are available to the RA 24/7, 365, and are an important piece of how we support them as they support our students. We also, the university provides after-hours network of partners, CAPS on call, as was just mentioned, the Dean of Students Office and the Crisis Response Team, and University Police that assist us in our after-hours response in support of residential students, and again, in support of the RAs. For each one of the situations that a staff member may encounter, we have detailed protocols that define the roles of each level of staff and the escalation expectations we have to ensure timely communication. We have a thorough pre-service training and also in-service training for the RAs and all of our staff at various levels, training on the protocols, training on mental health support, crisis intervention, making appropriate referrals are some of the topics that are covered both in pre-service and in-service training opportunities. The support of the staff is really important, in particular the RAs, because we realize their primary role is that of student and secondary as an RA, and we always try and keep that first and foremost in our plans, in our plans. Each RA has weekly staff meetings and then also one-on-one time with their supervising community director where they connect with the RA. They discuss issues that they have in support of their floor, but more importantly, and most importantly, any issues that the RA have in terms of their own mental health, their own ability to manage both the responsibilities of their position while maintaining their status as a student and a high functioning academic. The other thing I would say that we really focus on with the RAs in those conversations, and whenever they express some level of anxiety about the position or their work-life balance, if you will, we allow them to step away from the role if they need to do that. We've had access to counselors. Avery and her team have come out on countless occasions, both in support of residential students, but also in support of our residential staff. And so we continue to work individually and collectively with the RAs to make sure that we provide the requisite level of support so that they can continue to serve their students well, while we serve them well, in making sure that we give them a balanced approach to their work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. I think that's been in many ways something that a lot of people have been worried about, is how RAs are supported. So that's good information. All of this great information. Thank you, Avery, for telling us about how CAPS the levels of service that are available. And to you, Amy, for talking to us about the partnerships you're forming with other folks. I am keeping kind of a running list of questions that raise issues. And so I don't know that I don't want us to be in a Q&A format right now. I would really like us to be in a sharing experiences format, and for these administrative leaders to be able to listen to what you're hearing and what you're experiencing in the classroom and in your work with students. So, but I am tracking your questions, and Helena always saves the chat for us. So it would be great if we could sort of move into this other frame. I'd also want to ask, as I said at the beginning in my comments, this has been difficult for everybody, everyone. So there are people that hold more and less responsibility, and it's easy. I mean, in all of these situations, it's really easy to want to say, here is the problem, or there is the problem, or those sorts of things. And we've got to, I think, in order to do our best at this, we need to kind of zoom out and really ask our questions and share our experiences with a lot of compassion for everyone involved. So I'm going to just put that out there and ask you to think about how you frame your comments and questions from that lens. So Jessica, you've had your hand up for a while. Jessica, did you want to join us?
I'm so sorry. I did not mean to put my hand up.
You didn't mean to have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. Beth, let's go to you then.
Yeah, I did want to share something, Mimi, as following your guidance there, from a conversation that I had with a student just yesterday, actually, who is located far off campus, as in 2 hours away. The comment is how much the student appreciated virtual CAPS. And this is actually a little bit of a silver lining from COVID, because prior to COVID, from what she described, they just didn't have access to the counseling services as a student because they were located a couple of hours away. And so I'm taking this opportunity to share how incredibly helpful virtual CAPS was over a period of time to this particular student, and to encourage that regardless of how things go forward, that we have students who are not on campus. And so maintaining that virtual access will continue, I think, to be a really great help. And so I'm thankful to CAPS for that virtual approach. That was a huge help to the student, that I just spoke with the other day. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Beth. Allison, I think you're next.
Hi, I want to thank everyone for this conversation, and our students' mental health is extremely concerning to me. I'm a professor in the business school, which is, albeit its own type of stress, but I've heard personally more stories than I can even name of students who have felt hopeless right now. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing is that they're still struggling from COVID-related learning, from different transitional components, but they aren't feeling like that's being considered anymore in terms of a understanding empathy space. And so I just, in case you all don't get anecdotes as much as I do, I teach public speaking, so anxiety comes up a lot. I just wanted to share that I've heard from a student who was personally responsible for driving 3 of their friends to the psych ward after suicide attempts. These students refused to put down their parents' names on the information because they're scared to share their parents. So this student is then responsible for meeting with their doctors, communicating. They're the only person allowed to visit their friends. This is a 20-year-old. Just this morning, I got an email saying, I'm having a sense of existential dread, just like as an agenda item. I've heard from students who are really worried about their friends who are having eating disorders and doing self-harm in that way. One student said that, and this is not about CAPS, this is about student rumors. I just want to put that out there. One student said that their friend was turned away from CAPS because their eating disorder was not severe enough, which I can't even begin to imagine would be a true thing. And so there's a lot of information circulating among them, and a lot of it is scary, and they don't actually know how to help each other very much, let alone themselves. And I don't think that most professors know how to do this either. And so I just wanted to share these stories because I hear so many of them. I could probably name 5 or 6 more that I've heard in the past 2 weeks, but this is a big deal. And I beg my fellow professors to recognize that no grade is as important as someone's life. And so if you can reach out to individuals from a human level, it means the world to them. Also, don't be afraid to share your own experiences. They actually appreciate learning from how you came to the other side of the challenges you've had. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would also put in a plug. I know many people are signing up for mental health first aid training that is available, and it has been I do think it's quite a helpful course. It's a big time investment. So I know it is, or sold out. They're adding more and more sessions all the time. I was in one on Tuesday. I know Jill has signed up, so it may be a couple weeks out before you can, or 3 or 4, but put it on your agenda and make the time to do that. It does, it's a very useful kind of frame. Deb, I think you're up next.
I wish to begin by appreciating this conversation, and more important, appreciating the leadership of all of the people who spoke about these concerns. I wanted to quickly check about our absence office. As you know, since October 2019, our absence office is authorized to approve absences, and they send a notification. I'm sure all of you have received a notification, and we always promptly act on that. But a lot of our students have told me, and I don't know if it's true, maybe this is a great opportunity to talk about that once they submit an absence request, they have to wait for a long time, and I don't know what is long time, but it doesn't come soon enough. And the second thing is, there have been situations when our students feel that a legitimate absence request has been denied. And a third point is, we had heard that the absence office really has just one person, maybe it has increased, but can we have some clarification about how the absence approvals are done? How promptly can our students expect it, and how can we be informed in a way that we can help our students? Thank you.
Hi, Deb. This is Desiree Rickenberg. You and I have had an opportunity to talk a little bit about the University Approved Absence Office, and I've appreciated those conversations as well. For those of you who are not acquainted with the University Approved Absence Office website, really encourage you to go and check that out. I will pop it here into the chat just so folks can see that link. And so within that website, it details the expectations that students should have regarding their submission and timelines. And so right now we are operating on the basis that it should take no more than 10 days to be able to review and to be able to make decisions regarding that policy and regarding whether or not those absences are approved. But I know that there are a lot of questions about that, and I know that Mimi wants to be able to. We want to be able to kind of hold the space as an opportunity for people to share. And so I will just put that chat link in there, and then be more than happy to revisit some questions specific to the University Approved Absence Office when the Q&A period we get back to that.
But is it true that you have just one person taking care of absences?
We have one University Approved Absence Coordinator. We have hired some temporary staff to be able to start helping, and those folks have just started.
So I just wanted to respectfully mention that what you mentioned is, I think, perfectly legitimate, that you would take 10 days. I think it would be worth mentioning to the student that, hey, and I don't know, you already may mention that hey, it will take 10 days for us to say yes or no. And then if a student gets a no, which a lot of my students have, and I was not responsible for any of their no's, what recourse they have? Do they have a recourse to appeal it, to give more documentation? So a lot of our students are very concerned, and I think that adds to their mental health. Now they're in trouble, and the office has denied them a request, or as you mentioned, it would take them 10 days. And as you know, 10 days is a long time for in a course semester, especially at this time. So I really appreciate you all being sensitive about it, but I'm sorry to say our students keep expressing concerns.
Okay.
And this is the decision the university took to approve absences from a central office.
All right. So Deb, that's clearly on the agenda of something that needs to be talked about further. So let's keep going, because we want to make sure that we get other pieces of the puzzle in. Sue?
Yeah, I had an experience with a student last week who shot me an email and said, I'm not feeling like myself. Would you have time to talk? I immediately said yes. And long story short, the student was having really major first-rank psychiatric symptoms and had been in therapy, so forth and so on, and had tried to get to see someone and couldn't. And because I'm in the School of Medicine and because I have ties to the psychiatry department, I could contact a former student who's now a faculty member and managed to get this student an immediate appointment with someone. What I came away from this with was, what if I hadn't had those ties? What would I have done? What could I have done to be of help to this student? And the student was not on campus at the time, so forth and so on. I spent as much time as I could trying to figure out if they were actually actively in danger. But so even with all the resources, and I know everybody's trying their best, this was a potentially dangerous situation that, again, had I not had these personal professional ties, could have ended much differently. So I now have a policy for all of my classes where I tell the students, you can email me or contact me any time, day or night, if you are in trouble, and I will help you do something. Other people may not want to do that, and I think that's fine, but it's a tenuous thread, and I'm pleased that we have the systems that we have, but without 24/7, high quality, not going to the ER contact for somebody with really first-rank symptoms, it's tenuous. It was hanging by a thread. If I hadn't looked at my email, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Sue. I appreciate the fact that, part of what is important to me is helping everyone understand what many of us are doing in these spaces, just as faculty members, and being that kind of bridge and broker. And we may not be able to completely get away from all of that. But that's an important story to share. Beth, how about you?
Unmute. I just had two quick things that I wanted to share about experiences, and they both actually complement very well what we've heard so far. And the first is that students are exhausted, and what I'm finding in my class, and I teach graduate students, is they're having a hard time focusing. And so we hold a little bit of space in class just to kind of debrief, check in with each other, see how folks are doing. Although I would have rolled my eyes at this a couple of years ago, we do a little icebreaker kind of, connection type of thing at the beginning of class. And what I hear from students is that they're just having trouble organizing their thoughts, organizing their work. And we did relax some of our deadlines for some of the major assignments, where we just said, if you need an extension, let us know. And I've never experienced this before in all my years of teaching, but about a third of the class requested extensions for, just the reasons that they needed some space, that they were having trouble kind of organizing their thoughts and so on. And my second point was that I think I know the faculty are also exhausted and feeling under a lot of the same stressors that students are, and also doing many of the things that Sue just illustrated. We're meeting with our students, we're checking in with them, we're problem solving with them. And, I think it's important to recognize, these really heroic efforts, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, all of us. And we are also operating under a lot of the same stressors, in some cases dealing with family members who are isolating or trying to, keep up with what's going on with our kids in school and so on. And so I just want to recognize that those types of strains are on faculty as well. And we're also trying to support our staff and students at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Beth. Well stated. I do want to just quickly draw attention to this comment in the chat from Kelly Smith, who's pointing out the role of family medicine folks. And when students have relationships with family medicine physicians, sometimes that is a more accessible link. So kind of encouraging students to make that connection, to have a source of primary care perhaps before there's more of a crisis, or before they have a specific mental health need, because the family medicine folks can be very helpful in that regard as first line of defense. So thank you for that, Kelly. Jan? Jan, I'm sorry. I read your name and I say the wrong thing, even though I know it's different. So I apologize, Jan.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you all for sharing all this information, because it's really revealing to me. It's funny because for me, I am having a great semester. My kids just got vaccinated, and like things are going back together. I've been to a conference this semester, so like I'm having a great semester, and it's important for me to understand that not everybody has. And I think I have the privilege of sitting here and hearing this information, but there might be many faculty at the university who might be just asking, where is this coming from? So it would be good to think about how to communicate all this information to the rest of our university.
Yes, I'm very happy we're having this conversation on a day that it is a meeting of the general faculty and not only faculty council. So perhaps that helps. And I also hope that the summit on the 15th will be able to showcase some of this information. And I appreciate your honesty there, Jan, with what you're experiencing and how it's different, and how sometimes if things are going well for us, we aren't as necessarily, not in a unkind way, but we just simply aren't sensitized to what is going on in other places. So thank you. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Plinge from the Geosciences Department, and I'm coming from the perspective of someone who's teaching 2 large enrollment sections. So I have about 260 students in my lectures, and then I also run the geology labs. And even though grad students are teaching those labs, there's about 320 students there. So I've got about 500 undergraduate students that I'm kind of the be all end all for with some of these deadlines and things. And I am kind of highlighting what Mary Floyd Wilson just wrote in the chat, because I want to describe the situation that came up for my labs when we had the mental health day. So my labs, I have, how many? I have 18 in-person sections and 2 virtual sections of the lab. I have a team of 10 TAs that I work with. And on Sunday night, the night that the week we were going to have the mental health day, that was when we were supposed to have our in-class midterm for those classes. So my head TA called me up. We had a 10 p.m. meeting with all of my TAs to try to decide the most reasonable way to deal with the students, because we didn't want to take all the people who had lab exams on Tuesday and have them not have to do it until the following week, but make all the Monday labs have to do it. And so we basically went for maximum flexibility for our students. So we basically gave all of our students the option to take their lab exam like any day they wanted to. And let me just say that for my TAs, it was a lot more work. It was a lot of trying to figure out who took the exam when and getting stuff back from them. They had all sorts of concerns about, like all the members of one frat all took the exam at the same time in the same class because they had the option, I just want to say that my TAs were so stressed out about that flexibility. And so I just want to point out that there's this kind of cost that goes both ways, and people have been talking about the cost of faculty members as well. But again, the grad students are playing all these different roles. And so I just want to make sure that we think about them and their mental health as well with all this.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate the flexibility, what that took. I mean, I think a lot of people that is not an uncommon story. I don't think I certainly have heard that individually from many people about the level of flexibility that it took and really the dedication. I don't think people know these stories, so I appreciate hearing them in this public forum. Thank you. Let's see. Oh, Megan, is your hand still up? No. Okay. All right. Just checking. I'm not seeing other hands right now. So we are moving toward the end of our time together. And I know we want to hear a little bit from Dr. Meltzer-Brody about her leadership of the Mental Health Summit that's coming up on November the 15th. So unless there are further things that people want to say right now, we'll move to that. Okay, Samantha?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to offer a few reflections and then cut to the details about the summit. The concerns about the mental health of students mirrors what we're seeing in the general population and for our youth who are not on Carolina's campus. And this is a true public health crisis. So as the chair of the Department of Psychiatry, we are pummeled each and every day with the massive mental health needs across all of North Carolina and all the entities associated with UNC Health reaching out broadly.
The mental health of our youth was bad before the pandemic. There's lots of national data, CDC data, lots of other survey data, and the pandemic has worsened things considerably. And we're all now facing, as I'm hearing you all talk, our own exhaustion. And really what I see is a traumatized population of sort of everyone, but our youth in particular, who don't have the long range perspective and are struggling mightily. So the prevalence of suicide, of anxiety and depression, it's through the roof. The prevalence of eating disorders, of self-harm behaviors, you name it. And so for all of us who are entrusted with young people, those we live with at home, those are our neighbors, those we're related to, those who are our students, it's a heavy burden. And unfortunately, there are no easy solutions. It'd be really nice if there was. The prevalence has gone up 3 to 4 times, I like to say, but the number of mental health clinicians to take care of this has not gone up 3 to 4 times. So we are facing a real conundrum of how to do this. And we are, I can tell you, hiring like hotcakes as much as we can in the Department of Psychiatry, trying to keep up. But even then, it's really, really challenging. So all of us working together to think about creative solutions. We've been hearing a number of things today. It will take all of us working together thoughtfully, looking at this from multiple different angles and appreciating where we are now. But just want to say, the entire world is exhausted. We're all exhausted. The students are exhausted. I think everyone wants to just like go on a sabbatical for 6 months and come back and hope it looks better. And that may or may not be in the cards, but I hear you loud and clear. So for the summit, on the 15th, we are hoping to have a conversation and have been really inspired by the outpouring of people who want to be involved and are spending their time and energy on enormously short notice to rally behind getting something together with the hope that it will be meaningful. It certainly will not solve all the problems. And just to cut to the chase, it's a day-long summit. More information will be coming out this week. There's been communication. You have to register. You have to have a UNC email. So it's for UNC community only. We are working around the issue for our resident physicians and house staff that have a UNC Health email on how they're able to register. That's been highlighted because we don't want that group to be left out. The content is designed to educate, engage, and foster discussion among faculty, staff, and students. There is a student voices session, a faculty and staff voices session, a parent voices session, a JED Foundation presentation during the lunchtime hour, although since it's virtual, unfortunately, we're not all getting lunch delivered to our wherever you may be sitting. There will be working group presentations on prevention, crisis, and campus culture, and the goal is that these discussions will help to distill a set of recommended action items for consider.
Can you tell people what a JED campus is? I don't think people probably know what that means.
Yeah, well, so actually we have a JED campus expert. So JED Foundation is a national organization focused on mental health and suicide prevention on college campuses. And Amy Johnson has a lot of experience, so I will let Amy share that broadly.
Sure, and I'll just touch on this very briefly because Samantha really hit the highlights. The JED Foundation is this national association. They've been working in the field for a number of years, and it is possible for colleges and universities to sign on as a JED campus and partner with JED. You get consulting services over a period of 3 to 4 years, participate in the Healthy Mind Survey, which is a survey that some of you is a name that you may be familiar with, which gives you good campus related data and allows you to compare yourself against institutional peers. And it's just generally a good resource and some wonderful experience and opportunity to connect with best practices in the work.
So I'll just end by saying I have the privilege and pleasure to be working with Amy Johnson and her team. The working groups led, the faculty working group co-led by Mimi Chapman, the crisis working group co-led by Amy Ursano with child and adolescent psychiatry and Avery Cook, and the
prevention working group led by Amy Johnson and team, and then Mimi Chapman and is leading the faculty and staff working group. Do I have all those right? I think I said that.
With Andrea Husong.
And Andrea Husong, yes, thank you. And then the working groups then all have other team members they've brought in to work with them as well and inform this. So there will be interaction as much as there can be during a virtual what will be hopefully a well-attended event. And there is going to be, every attention paid to making sure that this builds on and sits on the shoulders of the 2019 Mental Health Task Force report that's being carefully reviewed, which there was an enormous amount of time, energy, sweat, blood, and tears that went into that. Seeing what had been actioned, what had not been actioned with the distraction of the pandemic, and where are we now? So I just want to say it's been a real privilege to be able to participate in this effort. And obviously this is enormously complicated and there will not be one solution. It will be all of us working together to think about a multifaceted approach.
Thank you, Samantha. So I think that brings us close to the end of our time. And I just want to take a minute to acknowledge those we've lost in our community and think about their families and their friends for a moment. And, they have names, they have legacies, they have people and promise that they've left behind. And I think, frankly, I think about their families every Saturday. I think about their families waking up one day and the next day being very different for them. And so that has stayed with me since those events. And I know all of you would join me in expressing our condolences to everyone affected. And with that, I will thank you for your attendance and participation today and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I second. Deb.
Without objection, we can adjourn by unanimous consent. Is there an objection? Madam Chair, we're adjourned.
Okay, thank you.